You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast. I'm Larck, able to take on Twitter. Here to talk about whatever last night was that we saw on television for the Auburn Tigers. Good Lord, it is a weekly segment this season of talking about the ineptitude of the Auburn offense and how awful the SEC officiating crews have been this season. Not only for Auburn, I'll point that out. It's not only Auburn where it's happening. It's a league-wide issue. But I'm going to time myself here. I'm going to get my ranting out about the refs out early. Because, again, did the refs play a part in Auburn losing this game? Absolutely. Are they the reason why Auburn lost this game? Absolutely not. Auburn has no one to blame but themselves in this game. This was an embarrassing loss to a team that Auburn was supposed to lose to because you had 2 weeks to prep for this game. And, oh, my Lord, I don't know what you perfectly schemed out an opening drive that worked, and Auburn drove down the field and scored. And then, you get 3 points on the next one, and then you don't score for the rest of the game. It's just an embarrassing. That's all it is. It is laughable at this point that we're sitting here yet again talking about how bad the offense looked. But I'm going to start off with rambling on about the refs for a little bit because the SEC has to answer for this. This is yet another game in a long list of games this year where the refereeing has been awful. It's been putrid. Auburn has yet again had to suffer at the hands of some terrible, terrible officiating. And I'm going to start off with the one that everyone knows about, the touchdown that got called a fumble. And I don't care, this is something that, if a Georgia fan says a touchdown, cool, or a fumble, cool. If an Auburn fan says a touchdown, cool. I mean, that's what those two fan bases are going to say. When the majority of college football is saying it was a touchdown, then you have a problem. The play happened, and Georgia came up with the football. Auburn was saying they scored. Georgia was saying they got the fumble and whatnot. So after the play ended, no call was made on the field. Then 40 seconds later, there was finally a call made. And they called it a fumble, which I don't know how you wait that long to make that decision. I've never seen it take that long. But what they did is they made that decision. That way they could review it for 10 minutes. So they sit there and they're looking at it and they're looking at it and they're looking at it. And it's just continuous. And all Auburn fans consider a thing. I'm saying this because I was thinking this. If it's taking this long to review this play, then it has to be a touchdown. You have to reverse your own call. And then they just turn around and upheld it, which is absolutely ridiculous. And they showed frame by frame, every single side, every single angle they showed. I mean, the back angle you can't really see. The front one, you can't really tell where the goal line is. But the pylon cam that the broadcast was looking at, you can see the exact moment the ball touches the plane. And then a couple milliseconds later is when the ball starts moving. And yes, it's close, but the line is indisputable. And it's a rule where even if the ball touches the goal line, it is a touchdown. That is a rule. And it's yet another time where I'm looking at the SEC officials and they don't know their own rules that we're talking about. It is time for the SEC to answer for calls like this and reviews like this. The last 2 minutes of the game lasted 36 minutes because of the amount of calls and reviews and the penalties and the timeouts and everything along those lines just kept it going. And it's ridiculous. And I'm going to call out one of the referees, and Ken Williamson. This crew is awful. This crew is awful. This is the worst crew you could possibly get to call your game. Ken Williamson has been like this for years. It has been forever, long ago, since Ken Williamson has been like causing games to be like this. It is laughable that man still has a job or that he is still in D1 FBS football because he should be calling like Wednesday night NAIA games at this point. Because that it is ridiculous that he still has a job and is still able to go on about his business doing what he did last night. And I'm going to go over I watched Xavier Atkins call for a late hit, which makes zero sense to me because he did not hit Gunnar Stockton late. He was already hitting him while he was throwing the football. He just finished his tackle after he let the ball go. They call a late hit and give a first down to Georgia. They tried to call a false start on Xavier Atkins as well, who perfectly timed a snap, and nope, offsides. They also spent time to review a Georgia catch, which was obvious it was a catch regardless, but they said they were reviewing for the completion. And what did they do? They noticed that Kyan Lee, who at that point in the game was playing his heart out, was playing the best game he's played all season. They ejected him for targeting. Not even reviewing it for targeting. They were reviewing it for a completion, but oh, wait, look at that. Kick him out. Like, it's malpractice at this point. And I mean, that's not the only time it happened. I mean, there are obviously going to be missed holding calls. I think Keldrick Falk was getting held all night. It's ridiculous at this point that it's just another week where I have to complain about the referees. But again, it's not the reason Auburn lost this game. I could say it's the reason Auburn lost a lot of that momentum, but Auburn had a 10-0 lead late in the second quarter. That fumble happened, Auburn lost momentum, and their offense drove down the field in the longest 2-minute drive I've ever seen in my lifetime, and got 3. Auburn was up 10-3 at half. But the way he came out in the second half was embarrassing. That was the most embarrassing part. And I mean, I'm looking at the stats over here. In the second half, Auburn had 20 yards rushing and 32 yards passing. Sorry, correction. 10 yards rushing. That's a -5 in the third quarter. 10 yards rushing, 32. 42 total yards as an offense in the second half. Penalties. I mean, you had 7 in the second half, in the second quarter, but you still had some big ones late in the third quarter. On third down conversions, you were lighting it up for the first half. 5 of 5 on third down conversions in the first quarter. 3 for 6 in the second quarter. So going into halftime, you were 8 of 13. After the last 2 weeks where you were 3 of 28. And what'd you do? You open up the second half. You went 0 for 6 across the second half. And at this point, it comes down to, whose fault is it? Hugh Freeze hasn't been throwing kids under the bus like usually it has been, but he's just saying, this team isn't can't find ways to win. This team finds ways to lose. And are you saying it's your fault again? Which, if it is your fault, then you should not have a job. Or is it on the execution of your players, in which there should be other guys on the sideline who you should be able to trust to put in these situations? I'm going to tell you, there is a debate to be had about the security of Hugh Freeze's job going into the rest of this season. And I said it this past week that I don't think the outcome of this game will determine Hugh Freeze's job status. But my mindset completely changed with how I saw Auburn answer after a little bit of adversity in this game. The slightest bit caused that entire offense to break down. And I saw Jackson Arnold miss on what should have been a touchdown and what should have been a dagger to end the game early, get a momentum back on Auburn's side. Eric Singleton streaking down the field, no one within 5 yards of him, and Eric Singleton's fast enough to break away and get a touchdown on what would have been a long play. That's one of those home run plays we've been waiting to see Auburn, break one loose on. And it's just laughable. Preston Howard had another stupid drop. Perry Thompson had a couple of great plays. But ultimately, I mean, he was targeted 6 times. I can't remember those 6 targets. I remember the 2 he caught. I remember one he did. He had to have, but It's just laughable at this point. I have never seen Auburn fans this broken down. And, I can look back. I don't think I even felt this crappy watching Auburn in 2012 when Auburn went 3-9. Like, it was just one of those things. It's like Auburn had a semi-bad roster and they were playing bad football. This roster is one of the most talented rosters Auburn has ever had. Wide receivers are loaded, linebackers loaded, D-line's loaded, corners are loaded. Everywhere is loaded. On paper, this team is uber talented. But they're playing like Purdy, Clark Lee, Vanderbilt when it comes down to an actual game. And I'm going to talk about the 11 on the offense. The defense has been great. Like the bend but don't break mentality has been working for Auburn, and they've broken sometimes, but it's not their fault. They're not getting time to rest. This offense is completely anemic. This offense is awful. This offense sucks. And I'm looking here, and I can't even blame it on the offensive line. I mean, I think Xavier Chaplin had one that where he jumped off sides again. But other than that, I mean, it wasn't that bad. I mean, you had a holding call on Xavier Miller in the second quarter, but you had a delay game. You had illegal formation. You had a holding call on Eric Singleton. That was early in the first quarter. But defense, I mean, it was another game. It was the defense had some bad penalties, but again, I don't think a lot of these were penalties. That pass interference on Rayshawn Pleasant, I wouldn't have called that. That targeting call should not have been called on Kyan Lee. It should not have happened. But I mean, it's just the team itself is undisciplined, and something's got to give at some point. Because I mean, we cannot sit here and watch another week of this. Missouri is up next. Missouri comes to the Plains next, and it's another night game. Probably another sellout crowd. How are you expecting night in, night out, Auburn fans filling up Jordan-Hare Stadium, and this is the product you keep giving them? Like, I have rarely ever seen Jordan-Hare empty. But the way I've seen this team play, it's working towards being empty for one of these games. Because it's been that bad. Auburn fans expect results. That's why they show up like they do. Auburn fans expect results. They're not a Kentucky team that are okay with Mark Stoops' mediocrity. They're not a team like, I don't know, Illinois that gets to witness a little bit of greatness every now and again, and then they're going to go to irrelevancy, then they're back up. No, Auburn is a team that expects to be in the hunt for the SEC every single season. They're a top 15 program all time. But the dark era of Auburn football has been upon us since Gus Malzahn got fired. And even then, I can't even say that Brian Harsin made me as mad as I was last night. I have not been that mad at an Auburn game in a long time. So this is absolutely ridiculous. And again, officiating didn't help. But again, you have to have some composure when it goes against you. I mean, believe me, I am the first person to start screaming and hollering when something goes wrong for my football team. But guess what? And believe me, I would have took the massive fine that the SEC would have given me for calling out them referees. But if you're going to sit there and tell me that you just need to keep playing, you just need to keep playing hard, then I expected you to go into that tunnel, expected you to go into that locker room and tell your guys to keep playing. No, they bent and broke at the same time offensively. And again, I look at this and it's like, what needs to change? Is it a head coaching change that needs to happen, or is it a quarterback or personnel change that needs to happen? Because again, I don't think Jackson Arnold has played horrible, but he's definitely not playing well enough to get you these wins. The missed opportunities down the field, holding on to the ball too long has been an ongoing theme. it just, something has to give here if you're Hugh Freeze. And if you're wanting to keep the Auburn job, if you're wanting to stay on the Plains and try to build a program, and you have to be able to make these changes. We said it last year with the Peyton Thorne and the Hank Brown controversies. But even like, is it only because of the interceptions? If Jackson Arnold started throwing interceptions, would that bring the change? Would that bring a change or a contemplation of that happening? Because I don't believe for a second that Ashton Daniels is any worse of a quarterback than Jackson Arnold is right now. I don't believe for a second. I mean, I've seen Deuce Knight play, and he looked like a freshman. But again, I'm not above just putting someone in there for a fresh change of pace. It is laughable that we are sitting here for the third game in a row talking about how the offense is unable to play in the SEC. This is a championship defense with a bottom 10 offense. And that is embarrassing. When you have a coach who, specializes, in his words, in calling an offense and prioritizing development of these players, and you're not seeing any development. It's the same thing every year. Where you saw Peyton Thorne even developed a tad bit, but he was still making those same rookie mistakes that he should not have been making anyways. Jackson Arnold should not be making these mistakes every week unless you're not coaching him. And if he's not coachable, then he shouldn't be on the field. Like, I don't know if it's an NIL contract issue. Like you told him he gets to start in this many games in the SEC if he signs his NIL with Auburn, but it's ridiculous. And I look back at that Ball State hype video where Hugh Freeze screams at the team, talking about all the fans out in the stands, and all he says is, "You owe them something." It's like, you owe them something. If that something is what I'm seeing, don't owe me anything. Oh, I have a ticket right now to go to the Auburn football game. I'm going to the Auburn, Kentucky game. And I'm going just strictly because of the social aspect of it right now. Because right now, Auburn football has shown me nothing that makes it to where I should go to watch them play live. There's been nothing, no product on the field that shows me this Auburn football team is worth going to Jordan-Hare Stadium, walking up them steps, and screaming at the top of my lungs to cheer for my favorite football team and watch what I'm watching every week. It is absolutely ridiculous. There's got to be a change soon, or it's just write the buyout check now. I just watched Penn State, fire James Franklin this morning. Virginia Tech and UCLA have already fired their head coaches. Well, guess what? UCLA is now a great team after firing their head coach. Their interim coach is winning football games. I'm sorry, there's like a gnat flying around my camera. But yeah, and the issue is, again, I understand the complaints. It's, if you fire Hugh Freeze, what happens to the recruiting classes? What happens to Cam Coleman? What happens to all these talented players who came to the Plains on a promise, on a whim, that they're going to be a great football team by year 3, by recruiting class number 3? Well, you're going to have to just take what you lose. I mean, if you're John Cohen, you better have some words with the NIL. I keep getting NIL department, and make sure that you have contingency plans to keep some of these dudes on your team. And the only way I can see it happening is give the keys to DJ Durkin and see what he can do for the rest of the season. Because nothing about this team tells me anything's going to change. Jackson Arnold has not been the quarterback he was told to be by Hugh Freeze, or Hugh Freeze told us he would be. Auburn committed to the run game in this one for a little bit. I mean, I'll give them that. I mean, they ran the ball for 140 yards against a team that, is good at stopping the run. But you kind of didn't rely on Jeremiah Cobb to do a lot of it. He had less carries than Jackson Arnold did, and you only had the one turnover, which was the fumble, which arguable how that was. I don't know anymore. It gets harder and harder to sit here and try to have a positive disposition on what Auburn is going to go. What is Auburn going to change? How is Auburn going to look different? Like it's embarrassing. Like Auburn, I never expected in my lifetime that Auburn would be the fan base to pray for basketball season to hurry up. And don't get me wrong, it's been that way for a while. But Auburn has been consistently like this. We just need to skip ahead to basketball season. Just see what Coach Pearl is doing. Coach Stephen Pearl. You see what Coach Vickers is doing over that women's basketball. Because Hugh Freeze is not getting it done in year 3. In year 3, we are still scraping by for points. I mean, I made this layout a little bit before the show today. I'd have to change Auburn's score. Auburn scored 10 points last week against A&M. They scored 17 versus Oklahoma. And half of the reason they even scored 17 is because of Xavier Atkins not Oklahoma. They got 10 last week versus Texas A&M because Xavier Atkins got almost a pick 6. But it's just embarrassing at this point that I have to sit here and complain about the same things every week. At some point, something's got to give. At some point, something's got to change. At some point, you need to start having a little bit more of a what's the word we're going to go for here? Take a little more responsibility for the offense you're putting on the field. And again, I understand it. Maybe Jackson Arnold is the most talented quarterback on the field or on the team. Maybe. But I've not been shown anything that proves to me that he's the best quarterback that I've seen this year, or that there's not a better option waiting behind him. I mean, if you're gonna, Auburn is almost to the point where saving face has to be the strategy here. And what do you tell recruits? This was a big recruiting game for Auburn. It was a night game. Cam Newton's jersey retirement. Everything was like, this is going to be the best game of the season for Auburn. So y'all come down here and watch this happen. And luckily, the recruits were like, yeah, I'm not coming here. Or none of them directly said that. But how do you put a product like that on the field and try to recruit an offensive player? That's something I don't understand. How can one put a product like that on the field and then turn around and go talk to a 4-star wide receiver or a 3-star running back or just anybody offensively? Like the defense can sell that. Like Elijah Melendez, dude, had himself a game. I think he was second on the team in tackles for Auburn last night. Yeah, he got himself a sack. Yeah, that's how you can show that to the defense. I mean, Braylon Womack was there. He had some things to say about Auburn. The defense did give up some plays. I won't deny the fact the defense did give up plays, but they only gave up 20 points to a top 10 team in the country. That's not terrible, but it's another game in a row where Auburn is struggling to even score 20 points. Iowa had an issue offensively a couple years ago. And they gave their offensive coordinator, Coach Ferentz's son, I can't remember, I think not Kirk, I forgot his name. They gave him a stipulation. You have to average this amount of points per game. And it was 24. 24 is bottom of the barrel averaging points per game if you're an SEC or Power 4 opponent or a team. Auburn has not put up 20 since they played South Alabama 4 weeks ago. It was 17, 10, and 10. Auburn scored more points against Baylor than they have against any SEC team combined. Embarrassing. And again, Durkin and his staff, no quarrels whatsoever. I think they did what they could. with what they were given, with the time that they were given. And I think the offense did a good job of killing a lot of the clock. But again, it doesn't amount to much if you're not putting points on the board. All I heard this past week was Auburn was going to start committing to something. Auburn was going to start making the changes. Auburn was going to start watching film, I guess, and make those changes happen. But they didn't, and they haven't, and they're not. And it's embarrassing. And I don't think you can go another week where you don't make anything happen. You don't make any changes. Again, I don't think Hugh Freeze gets fired this week, but I think if you lose to Missouri at home, yeah, you're going to have a nice little buyout check in the mail. That if you lose to Missouri, that's the straw right there. That's the one that breaks the camel's back. You cannot lose to Missouri. Missouri's a good football team. Don't get me wrong. But there's no way Auburn should come out of that game with a loss. Especially with that. Auburn is the best, worst team in the country. Like, they have the talent and they do these things that you're like, oh, well, they just keep doing this. They'd actually win. They'd probably win out. But cool. Well, Auburn can't keep doing that. Auburn, when was the last time Auburn hit on a deep ball? That's something I need to look at. I can't remember the last time Auburn hit a deep ball. There was, Preston Howard hit it. He got an 18-yard pass, but I don't think he caught that ball after the 15-yard marker. He caught that ball in stride at like 5 or 10 yards. But regardless, it's a tough look. It's a horrific look for Hugh Freeze and his stipulations of being such a good offensive mind. Something's got to change for Auburn, and Hugh Freeze needs to make it happen quick, or Auburn's going to be just another team in the line of teams that were a failure this year and have to look for a new football coach in the middle of the season. And again, everyone's already looking ahead to the quarterback or the head coaching hunt. I'm going to tell y'all, Kirk Cignetti at Indiana, he's not leaving the Hoosiers. He's getting ready to build a dynasty over there. He got hired 2 years ago and has already put forth more effort than Hugh Freeze has in 3. I'm looking over there at Cincinnati. Dang, Satterfield has turned Cincinnati into a ranked football team in 3 seasons. It's a collapse of expectations. It's a coaching malpractice happening offensively with this team. Auburn has more facilities and more going for them than Indiana or Cincinnati does. Maybe combined football-wise. But I'm sitting here on October the 12th, 2025, watching or talking about how Auburn football in year 3 of their football coach isn't able, still is making year 1 coaching mistakes. They're still making these, the mistakes that a coach would make when their job isn't on the line. Something's got to give. And I'm going to go and tell y'all again, Indiana is not going to give up Kirk Cignetti. I don't think Auburn should go for James Franklin either. But at this point, the top of your list is if Hugh Freeze does not make any changes happen, you give the keys to Durkin, and then you let him pick an offensive coordinator who can actually build a staff that, can make an offense happen. And then hands off. All thing I would say is Durkin plead for Marcus Davis to stay so Auburn can at least keep some of the wide receivers. But something's got to give with this staff offensively. Auburn is turning into Kentucky, or honestly turning into Arkansas, where they hit those dark ages, but then all they could talk about is how they had Darren McFadden for a couple of years, and they were really good for that time period. Auburn to become one of those teams at this point. So all I can say is I just hope that something changes this week. You couldn't change anything in 10 practices. Maybe a week after that, a game like that, you can fix something in 5, which not been proven that you can through 3 years. But again, if he gets fired, we'll talk about it. If he doesn't, we'll talk about it. No matter what happens, we're going to talk about it because it's something. It's just embarrassing at this point. I'm going to go through those comments. I'm going to give my grades, and then I'm going to give my defensive player of the week because the offense does not deserve one yet again. David Williams, yeah, it was a touchdown, no question. But if Jackson Arnold hangs onto the football, there's no conversation here. When it's that easy for a bad call to be made, it's Arnold being Arnold again. I completely agree. I think Auburn has to make that change at quarterback. And again, I hate that we're having this conversation again because we had it last year with Peyton Thorne after he had 6 interceptions. The conversation has to be had again and again and again. Jerry Blake, when we stop going to the games, then Auburn will make a change. I know that's not going to happen, but just saying War Eagle. And that's what they expect the people to show up and support Auburn and to do this and to do that, but aren't giving anything in return. And that's the sad part is Auburn fans do deserve better. There's not a more loyal fan base in the country that constantly gets this big of a shaft from the team they support. I cannot think of a team that gets it the worst. Are Auburn fans going to continue to sell out Jordan-Hare Stadium? Absolutely. But whether or not Auburn wins, Jordan-Hare Stadium is a ruckus environment, but it's not a hard place to play. Because regardless of how loud Auburn fans get, the team that they're rooting for isn't doing anything with the momentum that they should be getting from the crowd. And that's the sad part. Dave Williams again, it's the curse of Caddy. We should have given him a chance. He had the fire that Freeze never will. Listen, my thing, I'll always say this. If I were to attribute Auburn's curse that they're going under for anything, I've always been big about saying it's because of the people that rolled the trees at Toomers for the Braves World Series. That'll always be on my brain. If I sit there, I'm like, dang, Auburn is playing. Auburn looks like a team that got cursed years ago. It's because of that. Like like Nick Saban says, this place is haunted. It is, and whenever you make the spirits mad, they get mad. Then they get madder than mess at you. So. Every single one of y'all that went and rolled the trees for the Braves, it's on you originally. Because Auburn was 6-2 before that happened. And then everything fell apart. But yeah, all I can say is I don't think the better team, first half wise, if I went off the first half, the better team did not win. But at the end of the game, I think the better coach team did win. Better team lost. The better coach team won. But yeah, just looking at the yardage, I mean, Auburn ran the ball well, 140 yards, but they 30.9 yards per carry. Passing yards, though, 137. 61% completion percentage. There were a couple of should be interceptions that, Jackson Arnold gets away with. I need someone to, if there's like an advanced stat, I need someone to tell me how many almost interceptions Jackson Arnold has. And that's another conversation point that I think I could make here is, it feels like Jackson Arnold is trying way too hard to not throw an interception that I think is causing a mental blur in his head. I need Jackson Arnold to throw an interception. If you're gonna and Fire Freezer said I count about 4. You count about 4 probably in the game that we just watched, but he's probably averaging 4 per game. And I think if it's like a dam that needs to be broken, then let it happen. Let him throw a dumb pass down the field and let it get picked off. Maybe that will change something. But it does feel like there is an issue with him mentally to where he is, he almost throws that interception and then he, shuts down for the rest of the drive. But yeah, it's just embarrassing at this point that Auburn continues to put a product like that on the field. Defensive grade, going with the B yet again. They gave up some points late. Had some drives that didn't go their way, so they're going to get a B. But yet again, offense gets an F. Coaching gets an F. You had 2 weeks to prepare. You did not prepare very well. You had 2 great drives to start off. You faced a little bit of adversity, and you broke down, and you looked embarrassing doing it. So Offensive Player of the Week, again, is no one. Defensive Player of the Week, Xavier Atkins, 8 tackles, led the team yet again. Absolute dog. Go ahead and give him a Heisman Trophy. But again, I could have picked anyone for this. I think Elijah Melendez, again, had another great game. He had 6 tackles, a sack, and 2 TFLs. But you had some great plays out of a lot of these guys. Kyan Lee was on pace to get this award before that stupid targeting call was called on him. Yeah, yet another Xavier Atkins show out there. Hudson Cock had a terrible punt, but I think overall he wasn't awful outside of just that one. But, I mean, he's been off and on all season long. I'll always support Alex McPherson for getting the points on the board for Auburn. I feel like at this point he's made more field goals this season than Auburn has scored touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, it's tiresome at this point. But never fear. At the end of the month, we'll get Auburn basketball. We'll get exhibition game to talk about against Oklahoma State. Got some big things for Auburn across all the sports, but of course, football is always going to leave a sour taste in everyone's mouth. And time will only tell what's going to change. This is a big week, I think, for Hugh Freeze. It's probably the biggest week of Hugh Freeze's career right now at Auburn. Because, again, I think if you lose this game, I think you're as good as gone. And then after Missouri, of course, you have teams like Arkansas and Kentucky. And so finish all y'all's comments, and then we're going to get out of here. It's hard to talk about this horrific of a game. Fire Freeze, kind of about 4 where he hits him in the chest and the defender drops it. Yeah, I mean, if that's just this game, then yes. But I remember a couple versus Oklahoma. He probably had a couple versus Ball State. He definitely had a couple versus Baylor, or probably didn't have any against Baylor because Auburn didn't pass the ball. The problem is there's always some special teams breakdown every week for the past 3 years. I see your correction there. And that's the thing. It's embarrassing again. Auburn football is just embarrassing, but I keep saying that word because it fits. I like consciously Auburn fan since 2004, so 21 years since then. I just went throughout my entire life, never worrying about a field goal. I had Wes Byram, then I had Daniel oh my God, who was the guy? Cody Parkey. Then I had Daniel Carlson. Then even Anders for a little bit wasn't that bad. He was inconsistent at times, but I think overall Anders was pretty good. And then Alex McPherson, who was looking great, dealt with his issues. And, they had to go to someone else. And then past few years, it's been I never know if Auburn's going to make a field goal. If Alex McPherson is not kicking the ball, I don't know if Auburn's going to make it from anywhere on the field. And that's something I hate to say as an Auburn fan. And David Williams, we have more penalties than Georgia at home this time. How does that happen? Undisciplined football. And also some bad calls from the refs, but undisciplined football. But yeah, that's going to be all from me on this post-game show. We'll be back Tuesday to talk about what Auburn can do to beat Missouri, going over the press conference. I expect Hugh Freeze to have a lot of answers for what happened on Saturday and what they're going to plan for against Missouri. So stay tuned for that. Of course, Thursday is the pregame show. Don't worry. Auburn basketball is going to be a heavy talking point for the remainder of this month because it's about the only thing Auburn fans can look forward to right now because Kentucky looks like a hard game at this point. With that being said, thanks for tuning in to the College Loop Podcast. I do want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the channel. Of course, right now we are sitting at about 984 last time I checked. So thank you all who have subscribed to the channel. Getting so very close to 1,000 subscribers. It'd be awesome to reach that milestone. Again, I left the challenge up. What happens first? College Loop hitting 1,000 or Auburn fully committing the run game? They ain't fully committed yet. So we got plenty of time to beat Auburn football in that regard as well. So thank you all who have subscribed. Thank you all who have liked the video. Thank you all who have commented on the live stream. Let me know what your thoughts are on Auburn versus Georgia that happened yesterday. And what are your thoughts? Do you think Auburn should fire Hugh Freeze, or do you think it's a personnel problem and a quarterback change needs to be made? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. But of course, it's going to do it here for us over here at the College Loop Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Of course, we'll be back on Tuesday. And of course, all being said, thanks for tuning in to the College Loop Podcast yet again. And as always, War Eagle.